Britain is quietly doing something that almost no one outside defense circles has fully clocked yet. While Europe debates budgets, argues about industrial policy, and scrambles to rebuild its forces, the United Kingdom is methodically constructing the foundations of what analysts from the UK Ministry of Defense, RAND Europe, and multiple NATO-aligned think tanks describe as one of the most advanced, best-armed long-range strike complexes anywhere on the continent. Defense journalists at the BBC, the Financial Times, and Reuters all point to the same pattern. Britain isn't just buying a few shiny missiles. It is restructuring its entire warfighting economy around the idea of deep, sustained, high-tech firepower. And it's doing it without the usual fanfare. No dramatic military parades, no bragging about wonder weapons, no fever-pitch publicity campaigns. Instead, the UK is building factories, signing quiet bilateral treaties, stockpiling advanced munitions, and committing billions to long-range strike systems at a scale that defense analysts say no European country, not even France, has previously planned for in peacetime. It's the kind of buildup that shows up first in procurement notices, parliamentary committee hearings, and obscure industrial announcements rather than viral clips on social media. This is the real story of how Britain is quietly building Europe's most advanced weapons, or more precisely, positioning itself as one of Europe's leading hubs for advanced long-range weapons, why it's happening now, and why it may reshape the balance of power on the continent for the next 30 years. Underneath the noise of daily politics, Britain's entire defense posture changed in 2025. The country's Strategic Defense Review, the SDR, explicitly warned that the UK must be ready for an era of sustained high-intensity conflict, something defense analysts like Dr. Jack Watling at RUSI point out is essentially code for long war, not short interventions. This isn't about Libya-style air campaigns or a few weeks of targeted strikes. It's about the ability to fight, supply, and adapt over years, under constant pressure, against a peer adversary. This document didn't call for flashy new jets or prestige projects. It called for something harder, less glamorous, but far more important: industrial depth. The simple ability to build advanced weapons at scale, continuously, for years, even decades. The SDR talks explicitly about an always-on munitions pipeline, about rebuilding energetics production, the explosives and propellants that sit behind every shell and missile, and about shifting from a small professional intervention force to a force and an economy that can sustain high losses and keep fighting. To make that shift real, London committed to raising defense spending to at least 2.5% of GDP by 2027, with an ambition to move toward 3% in the following parliament if the economy allows. That figure appears in government speeches, the SDR summary material, and coverage by outlets like the FT and the House of Lords Library. It puts the UK at the top tier of European defense spenders, alongside countries like Poland and well above the NATO 2% benchmark that many allies still struggle to hit. But the spending isn't the story. The real story is what the money is being spent on, and how quietly the UK is locking in those choices. Britain has committed to procuring up to 7,000 long-range precision weapons, a number taken directly from the Strategic Defense Review and repeated by independent analyses from think tanks and defense media. Government documents describe these as long-range weapons, rather than just missiles, because the basket includes cruise missiles, heavy attack munitions for aircraft, land-based deep strike rockets, ship launch systems, and other precision capabilities. These aren't generic bombs or basic artillery shells. They are designed to hit high-value targets hundreds or even thousands of kilometers away. They include cruise missiles, deep strike weapons, anti-ship systems, and battlefield long-range fires that draw directly from lessons in Ukraine, where deep strikes against logistics, command posts, and air defenses have proved decisive again and again. If you look at how Ukraine has used Storm Shadow, Scalp Egg, ATACMS, and homegrown systems like Grim 2 and the latest Neptune derivatives, a pattern emerges. Wars are increasingly decided not just at the front line, but in the logistics hubs, fuel depots, radar sites, and air bases hundreds of kilometers behind it. Britain is reorganizing around that reality. According to senior defense ministry officials quoted by The Telegraph and discussed in RUSI briefings, the UK is shifting from intervention-era boutique procurement, a handful of gold-plated platforms used sparingly, to long war industrial scaling. That means stockpile depth, rapid replenishment, and permanent production lines that don't shut down between conflicts. It means accepting that munitions will be used in vast numbers and planning the economy, not just the military, around that fact. And that's where the quiet part really starts. Across the country, at least 6 new British munitions and energetics factories are being planned or expanded, according to current government plans and parliamentary and press reporting. The Ministry of Defence's own announcements, parliamentary debates recorded in Hansard, and reporting in The Guardian, the UK Defence Journal, and other outlets all converge on the same headline commitment. At least 6 new plants this parliament, under what is often referred to as Project Nobel and the Factories of the Future initiative. These facilities are intended to form an always-on industrial base designed to pump out thousands of long-range munitions per year. Sites in places like Grangemouth, Teesside, and Milford Haven have been flagged as potential candidates in official notices, and in a recent redaction error reported by The Guardian, we even saw some of the draft location lists that weren't meant to be public. These aren't random spots. They're locations with petrochemical infrastructure, port access, rail links, and a local workforce that already understands heavy industry. This is not just rearmament. This is industrial mobilization. These factories are expected to produce 155mm artillery shells in Scotland, missile components for systems like Tomahawk and its successors, advanced energetic materials like TNT, RDX, and nitrocellulose, and guidance systems needed for next-gen precision weapons. Ministry of Defense projections, echoed in SDR summaries and government press releases, say that the Long-Range Weapons Initiative will support around 800 jobs, while separate MOD and media reporting on Project Nobel talks about at least 1,000 new jobs once the factory network is fully built out. Some press and industry analysis go higher when they include suppliers and knock-on effects. The exact job numbers will shift as projects firm up, but the direction of travel is clear. Britain wants to be a permanent mass producer of advanced munitions, not an occasional one. The strategic logic is simple. Europe can field tanks and jets all day, but without the ability to produce long-range strike weapons in large numbers, none of those platforms can win a long war. NATO learned that in 2022 and 2023, when Ukraine burned through Western stockpiles faster than allies could replace them. Public NATO briefings and EU ammunition plans openly admit that European shell production had fallen to peacetime levels that were simply not fit for purpose. Britain decided not to make that mistake again, and it decided to build the answer at home. But production alone doesn't make something the most advanced. The systems themselves matter, and this is where the UK has made some of the boldest moves in Europe. The flagship program, and one that analysts from the Aviationist, Breaking Defense, and the UK Defence Journal describe as a generational leap, is the Deep Precision Strike Weapon being co-developed with Germany. According to the UK Ministry of Defence and reporting by Reuters and others, this missile is designed for a range of over 2,000 kilometers. For context, Storm Shadow and the German Taurus cruise missile max out around 500 kilometers. Going from roughly 500 to over 2,000 isn't just an upgrade. It's a strategic transformation. A weapon like that turns almost all of Europe and much of Russia's western depth into potential target space, depending on where it is launched from. This missile would allow the UK to conduct precision strikes far into an adversary's depth, denying them sanctuary anywhere within a radius stretching from the Arctic to North Africa and across most of European Russia. Think oil refineries, rail choke points, air bases, long-range radar sites, logistics hubs, and major naval facilities, all potentially within reach if the missile is deployed on the right platforms. Its development is tied to the Trinity House Agreement, the UK-Germany Defence Pact signed in London, a deal widely reported by outlets like Politico Europe, Deutsche Welle, Reuters, and detailed on the UK government's own website. That agreement doesn't just talk about one missile. It lays out a broader cooperation package. Joint procurement of Stingray torpedoes for P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft, German purchases of British military bridging equipment, and deeper coordination on logistics and maintenance. But the missile's existence isn't a flex of nationalism. It's a quiet acknowledgement that Europe needs a domestically built, NATO-compatible, long-range strike capability that doesn't rely exclusively on American platforms like Jassimer or Tomahawk. It is, in practical terms, one of the most ambitious strike weapons ever attempted jointly in Europe, framed by the UK and Germany as a core part of a wider European long-range strike architecture. Parallel to this, Britain and France and now Italy are pushing the Future Cruise/Anti-Ship Weapon Program, which MBDA has recently rebranded as Stratus. According to MBDA's own releases and coverage by naval news and defense correspondents at the Paris Air Show, the program is testing both a stealthy, low-observable subsonic cruise missile and a highly maneuverable supersonic design. One is optimized for penetrating heavily defended land targets. The other is built for defeating major surface ships and high-value air defense assets. Current official language talks about Stratus as being aimed for service in the 2030s, rather than putting a hard date on initial operational capability. If it does enter service on that timeline, it gives Britain a next-generation deep strike and naval strike weapon at a level that only the US, China, and perhaps Russia currently operate. It will replace Storm Shadow and Harpoon for the UK and Exocet and Scalp for France, consolidating a messy family of older systems into a more coherent European deep strike ecosystem. These aren't isolated projects. They're part of a coordinated shift. Britain wants to be one of Europe's centers of excellence for long-range weapons, from air-launched cruise missiles to ship-launched strike systems and land-based deep fires. And then there's the part almost nobody talks about in mainstream coverage: directed energy. Britain's Dragonfire laser weapon developed by CinetiQ, Leonardo UK, and MBDA recently completed a series of tests that, according to the UK Ministry of Defence and confirmed by Reuters, Defence News, and tech outlets like Tom's Hardware, shot down high-speed drones at the Hebrides test range. The MOD described it as a UK first for above-the-horizon tracking and interception with a laser. The cost per shot, around £10, roughly $12 or $13 at current exchange rates, a figure UK officials and industry representatives have repeated in multiple briefings. Compared to missiles that cost £100,000 to £1 million each, this is a genuine shift in the economics of air and missile defense. You go from carefully rationing your air defense missiles to firing repeated laser shots without worrying that you're burning through your budget on every engagement. The Royal Navy has already signed a contract worth about £316 million to deploy Dragonfire on warships from 2027, starting with a Type 45 destroyer. That contract, reported by Reuters and detailed in recent MOD releases, is expected to sustain nearly 600 skilled jobs across the UK and kickstart a potentially exportable British laser weapons industry. What makes Dragonfire especially relevant is that it fits the UK's industrial philosophy: scalable, defensively decisive, and built quietly without political theater. It's not a vanity project. It's a way to counter the drone and missile saturation tactics we've watched unfold in Ukraine, the Middle East, and the Red Sea, but at a cost per engagement that governments can actually sustain. But this story of advanced weapons doesn't stop at conventional arms. It extends into the nuclear domain, still the backbone of British strategic power and one of the least understood pieces of the puzzle. Through the long-standing UK-US Mutual Defense Agreement, recently amended to remove expiry dates and put key parts of the treaty on an enduring basis, Britain shares nuclear and submarine technology with the United States at a level unmatched anywhere else in Europe. This covers warhead physics research, materials science, submarine design, and missile integration work on systems like Trident. On top of that, the UK and France recently reinforced their nuclear coordination through the Northwood Declaration, reported by Le Monde and other European outlets, which created a joint nuclear steering or oversight group to deepen policy coordination and crisis planning. This doesn't mean a shared nuclear button, but it does mean closer alignment on doctrine and potential joint signaling in a crisis. Inside that nuclear ecosystem, Britain is working on a new warhead, sometimes referred to in open sources as Astria, or the MK7, designed to be compatible with the Trident D5 missile and its eventual successor. While many technical details are classified, parliamentary reports and independent nuclear policy groups indicate that the UK is likely to increase its warhead ceiling modestly, reversing part of its earlier reductions. Analysts from the French Institute of International Relations and UK think tanks argue this is partly about replacing aging US tactical bombs stationed in Europe, and partly about making sure Britain's deterrent remains credible against Russia and, increasingly, China. All of this is tied to the undersea technologies used in the Dreadnought-class ballistic missile submarines now under construction at Barrow-in-Furness, platforms that will form the backbone of Britain's continuous at-sea deterrent from the early 2030s and are expected to remain in service into the 2060s. Everything being invested in those submarines, from quieting technologies to advanced combat systems, spills over into conventional undersea warfare and anti-submarine tactics. None of this is loud, none of this appears on a parade ground. But in capability terms, this is one of Europe's most sophisticated undersea deterrent complexes, plugged into NATO's nuclear planning, connected to some of Europe's most ambitious long-range strike programs, and supported by what is arguably one of the fastest expanding munitions industrial bases in Europe. There is another layer though, and without it, the whole structure wouldn't work. Standardization and interoperability. The UK has learned from Ukraine that victory doesn't come from isolated weapons. It comes from networks, from your ability to connect sensors, shooters, logistics, and allied forces into a single, coherent targeting web. That's why the SDR makes a big deal of spending more than £1 billion on what it calls a new digital targeting web by 2027, designed to integrate drones, jets, ships, satellites, and ground units into one targeting ecosystem. In parallel, the UK is investing heavily in AI and autonomy, with government documents and industry statements openly talking about swarming drones, autonomous underwater vehicles, and AI-assisted target recognition. These aren't science fiction buzzwords. They're directly tied to the same long war logic. You need systems that can operate at scale, react quickly, and reduce the burden on human operators in a saturated battle space. That's why Britain is pushing quietly to harmonize long-range strike systems, targeting networks, and munitions production across Europe. Reports from Chatham House, the European Council on Foreign Relations, and NATO's own defense industrial reviews highlight how fragmented Europe's weapons ecosystem is today. Dozens of different tank models, multiple overlapping air defense systems, a zoo of artillery calibers and missile types. From a logistics perspective, it's a nightmare. This shift isn't flashy, but it's powerful. It means Britain isn't just building weapons, it's building ecosystems. Not slow, not simply declining, not stuck in the past. What you see instead is a country arguably building one of the most technologically ambitious weapons and deterrence ecosystems in Europe, quietly, methodically, and with strategic patience.